Hello, you guys. It's me, Dr. Torie, here for another episode of Be Victorious. Sing it with me this time. Be victorious. Now, I am extremely excited for this guest that we have coming here today. Julie is amazing. I know when I say amazing, I mean it's real. It's all that in the bag of chips. She has this award-winning memoir, Twice a Daughter, A Search for Identity, Family, and Belonging, that came out in 2021. It's the story of her 5-year search for her birth relatives. She has a weekly blog, That Girl, This Life. She has a follow-up book, though, you guys, called Belonging Matters, Conversations on Adoption, which is a Barnes and Noble bestseller. It is my pleasure to have on our podcast, Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Torie. Thanks for having me today. This is going to be a great conversation.
I'm screaming. Can you hear my scream? Because this is the stories that need to be shared. So I'm excited that you're here. Thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast. So let's just dive into the dive of the diving in. You're aware of ACEs, correct?
I am aware of ACEs.
And you think that there is something that should be added to
Yeah.
your ACEs score. Do you know your ACEs score?
I do know my ACEs score. It's a 4.
Yay, mine's is 2. Mine's is 2. But once we add some things, because I can tell you, your story definitely needs to be shared. And once we add that, of course, your score will increase, but that doesn't define your score. So let's talk a little bit more about your 4. Tell us about your memoir. That's the first thing I really want to talk about because I actually think it's amazing.
So at 48 years old, I was sent for a breast biopsy. And I came back from that breast biopsy, and my husband said, "You got to get at your adoption story, your adoption history." And I'd been avoiding it. I knew that I was from closed adoption era and that I wasn't going to be able to find out very much. I tried once before and got shut down by my adoption agency. But it was pretty evident that I needed some help. So I called my twin sister. I was adopted with my identical twin sister, a real blessing, because to grow up with a full sibling when you're an adoptee is just an absolute treasure. So I got her permission. She said, yeah, let's do it. I'm with you every step of the way, but I got a full-time job and that comes first. And I said, no problem. I was a stay-at-home mom. I have 4 children. Do all the legwork and we'll consult at every step. The big stumbling block was that my parents still had our adoption papers. So to get those papers, I was going to give a pretty big flag up what I was about to do. Right. And I knew, basically had a good idea how the news was going to be received. My dad would be okay about it, and my mom would take it pretty hard. I think, growing up, we always talked about our adoption and they always said that they would help. But here I am almost 50 years old and the day has finally come. And she did not take the news well. So it started a rift between us. And she came around eventually. And that's towards the end of the story. But there was a lot of legwork to do. The laws in the state of Illinois were changing at that time. Lucky me. So I was able to access my original birth record, but the original birth record wasn't helpful. And this is something that I talk about in the book. Back in 1959, when I was adopted, women were allowed to use an alias. when they gave up a child for adoption. It was perfectly legal. Um, they were also able to relinquish their parental rights without asking the birth father for his permission. All of those things are no longer legal. But my original birth record had my birth mother's alias and no name for my father. So it was pretty clear I needed more help. And there was an intermediary service through the state of Illinois run under the auspices of the court system. And so I was assigned a court appointed intermediary, and she was able to open all the sealed records and find my birth mother's name. And that launches the whole story. Birth mothers, they don't want to be found generally unless it's their idea to make contact with the child that they placed for adoption. She did not want to be found. She didn't know she was pregnant with twins when she found herself pregnant. My birth father wouldn't marry her, which is often the case. And she changed her name in order to place my sister and I for adoption. And she did not receive the news well that we wanted to make contact with her. So that's the beginning of the story. And there's a lot more in between. But one of the things that you and I talked real briefly about before the show, adoption should be on the list of ACEs. Adoption is considered by a lot of experts as the primal wound. The ties between a mother and a child severed so abruptly. There's attachment disorders that take place after the fact. My sister and I were 3 weeks old before we were adopted. And I often wonder what happened in those 3 weeks when we were wards of the state, being taken care of, round the clock, nurses and nurses' aides. What happened? And I certainly think as an infant, while I can't remember any of that, that had to be traumatic to be cared for by strangers, not bonding with any of them, and certainly not in the same space, little bassinet with my twin sister too. So adoption should definitely be on the list.
I think so. You know why I think so? Because it's the reason why your husband, who is a hero to me, has pushed for it, because there are things that have happened to you physically, mentally, emotionally, that is a result of it. So when you look at ACEs and you look at the characteristics in the categories of ACEs, you won't know those things that happen to your parents that can have an effect on you. So something as easy as a mammogram, that history is important. It's you need to know it. You need to know that these things have an effect on you, but it's hereditary. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't know that. And when you're adopted, how can you know these things if you don't know who that person is? So my heart goes out to you, but my heart goes out to your husband, because he's a hero. He loves you, because at the end of the day, somebody else wouldn't have even thought about that. And the fact that even though you're starting now, kudos to you. And I hate to hear that she didn't want to be found, because she's missing out on two beautiful women. You are seriously amazing. Just anybody to me that shares their story are heroes to me. Like, again, once upon a time, it was me sharing my story, seeking help on why my parents were going through their generational trauma, and found out about mine. You know what I mean? So when you think about it, and I hate to say that, but you have 4 beautiful children. They also want to know. You know what I mean? The story doesn't start with you. There was someone else before that. But got a question. Do they know that you're adopted?
Yes, all my children know that I'm adopted. I was able to make contact with my birth mom eventually. She changed her mind about the contact. We met her, my sister and I, and she's 91. I still have contact with her and probably have been in the same space with her probably a half dozen of times. She's
Wow.
been able to give me my family history, my genealogy, a lot of pictures. It took her a long time to tell her siblings. She's one of 13. She knew that some of them would judge her for having had, from that generation, they look at themselves as sinners.
Mhm.
They've had sex before marriage. If you're Catholic, like I was raised to be, and she was, that's a big no-no. And certainly to get caught and find yourself pregnant, her family would have disowned her. I know all those things, and I certainly have empathy and forgiveness for her. But it has been hard on her to welcome us into the family per se. And that secondary rejection that my sister and I faced from her, adoption being the first one, and then the secondary rejection with her turning away from us in the beginning was really a tough pill to take. And fortunately, I was very involved with Catholic Charities in Chicago, which was my adoption agency. And the social worker there introduced me to an adoption support group made up of birth parents, adoptive parents, and other adoptees like me who were struggling. The birth parents, too. Birth parents often reach out to try to find their birth daughter or son. They were also struggling in the same journey of making contact with the relative that they lost through adoption. And that support group was a formative experience for me because of being able to share my story, feel validated and supported by people that understood because it was happening to them. And I'm still involved in it now, 15 years later.
Mhm.
But to go back to your other question about this generational trauma that happens to us, part of my story was also making contact with my birth father. Um, like my birth mom, he did not want to be found either because he had not shared his story with his wife or his children. Half brother, I have a half brother and a half sister, and his own sister. So my biological aunt died of breast cancer before she was 40. And
Wow.
so knowing that piece of information enabled my doctors to order the right test. I'm on a special protocol. I never developed breast cancer, but my body was holding this trauma and this story. And miraculously, now that I know my story, my health is fabulous. Also, interestingly, Dr. Torie, my twin sister never had any of the symptoms that I had. She's never had breast biopsies. She didn't have some of the other health issues. And I often wonder, why is it? Was I the guinea pig or the scapegoat? Or was I the one who really was harboring this injustice of not having information? And it was my role to do it for both of us.
Mhm.
Between us, between my twin sister and I, we have 4 daughters. They all know that they have to have this stepped up protocol to be watchful. I think I saw this week that there's now guidance that mammograms should start at 40
Mhm.
instead of 50.
Mhm.
So good things are coming out of the testing, and
Oh, I'm sorry. Look, let me tell you, I'm into this story. I'm so sorry. I'm shaking my head. That means in these sentiments. So, yes, I agree with you 110%. Yes. The change from 50 to 40, absolutely. The change that it's mandatory,
Mhm. Yeah.
pat yourself on the back because I think um I want to say that people like you attribute to that because of the fact that you continue to advocate and you're providing the history and you're sharing your story. So thank you.
You're welcome. But talking about sharing the story, so the book came out almost 3 years ago, right around Mother's Day, which is appropriate to the talk about the mother-daughter relationships that happened. My adoptive mom not supporting my journey to find my first family, and also my birth mom having a second mother. My family that I grew up in, my twin sister and I are the oldest, and then my parents adopted again a little boy, and then they had three biological siblings. I have they had three biological children afterwards. So I grew up in this really big blended family, and what's beautiful about it is my parents did not play favorites, or I would say I didn't have the sense that any of us were had preferential treatment, which that wasn't an ace or aces in that respect. But my sister and I, because we were the oldest of this big family, we had a lot of responsibility. There was a lot of babysitting, a lot of expectation on us to be mature, to grow up faster, maybe than we needed to, and in a sense that was a childhood trauma, that I was an adult before my time and expected to put other people's needs before my own. I also think that played into my mom's attitude about my adoption search. Was I was expected to put her needs as a parent in front of my own. She was disappointed in me for choosing to find this other family. I think it came from a place of fear. Um, I was disappointed in her that she couldn't see my needs before her own. I also respect the fact that she didn't draw a line in the sand. She didn't say, choose her or me. Um, she does come full circle towards the end of the book, Twice a Daughter. And the reason being was the brother and the sister that I find. My brother had married somebody that we knew, our whole family knew. A true God wink moment, if you will, because the fact that this family of mine, the second family of mine, was also people that my mom and dad knew, they immediately welcomed them. And there was this joyous coming together, which I share at the end of the book. It allowed my mom to realize that this isn't going to be bad. This is going to be a good thing for the family. This is okay. And it's interesting when you think about blended families in the sense of the word that your listeners are familiar with: divorced parents, remarried, stepsisters and brothers. While it's not the greatest situation for everybody, it's culturally accepted, right, to have these second families. So why isn't it culturally accepted for adoptees to have these second families that they're related to, right? So I think that that's another part of the conversation that we need to open people's eyes to. For adoptees to go down this path of searching for birth relatives, it shouldn't be either or. It should be, why not? This is your family. Your heart is big enough to hold space for all of these people. Yeah.
I agree 110%. Do you find in your history or your search that more people are accepting of what you've done? Because what you've done as a hero is know that there's people out there that haven't. And like how you said in the beginning, your birth mother wasn't accepting, glad to hear that she is now. How do you feel knowing that there's a tremendous change from earlier years to now?
I'm relieved that all of that hard work is behind me. One of the reasons I love to talk to book clubs and on podcasts is to try and dispel some of the myths surrounding adoption. Um, One of the big ones is that we as adoptees are not choosing to be disloyal to our adoptive families by going down this path. We're choosing to know to take ownership of who we are, all of who we are, not just some of it. Um, so that's one of the big pieces. And I do have trouble sometimes when I talk to bigger groups because it is also like there's always adoptive parents in the group, and then there's some adoptees, and quietly there's usually some birth moms that maybe don't want to speak about their experience. It's still too painful to them. Unfortunately, sometimes there's some adversarial conversation between me as an adoptee who went down this path of searching and the adoptive parents in the group. They get defensive. This is
Mhm.
my child. Yes, it is your child, and your child loves you, but your child also has this other family that they also belong to. Please don't make them choose, except that they have this history. Adoption was a plan made for them
Mhm.
in their best interest, but they didn't choose that for themselves. It was made for them.
Mhm.
So the dialogue around that is such an important conversation. And I think adoptees like myself and my age group, and now younger, they're getting more involved with adoption advocacy. State of Illinois was one of the very first states to change the adoption statutes, allowing open records for birth records. Right now, as of this moment, there's only 15 or 16 states that allow people like me to access their original birth records. There's a lot of work to do. There's 35 more states that have to come around, and some of them are in the works, and some of them are going to be a long way off before that happens.
And guess what? I'm gonna be there for the journey. I think this is amazing because what you're saying is once upon a time it was none. And even though there's 15 or two, so that the other states will catch on. So let me share. I love the statistics. Yeah, I know you know I'm a researcher, so this was good. It's the same way for ACEs to me. When I'm going to presentations and things of that nature, it's sensitive. People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to put their business out there. They don't want to be seen as different in the light. That's why
Mhm,
I applaud people like Professor Stewart, who was episode 45. We just premiered him because he
mhm.
actually admitted it like, hey, wait, hold on. So you mean to tell me as a parent that has a previous marriage, have two other kids, get remarried, that's an issue for my kids? Absolutely. Because we normalize a lot. We normalize a lot. And when it comes to ACEs, it's not everywhere either. The
Mhm,
state of California was doing ACEs test. They were doing this type of thing, like um, primary care providers was requiring the ACEs test to happen to see clients just so they can understand ACEs. And shout out to Dr. Nadine Burke Harris. She was a Surgeon General. She just retired about a year and a half ago. So this was a really big deal in California. New York was doing the same. I came up with ACEs Awareness Month because they had ACEs Awareness Month. So slow progress, But it doesn't matter. I accept the slow progress as progress because somebody's listening. And let's be clear, I have listeners on my podcast and they're listening. And I'm telling you now, once your story continues to get out there, more people will continue to advocate because you are not alone in this journey. I promise you, you are not. I can name at least 4 people that have been on this podcast that have similar stories. And what we need to do is do what you're doing with Catholic charities and your speaking engagements and things, is get these peer groups together, get people together so we can form collaborations and network. It's more power in people having conversations, which is the reason why I encourage people to understand ACEs and do something about it. You're doing something about it is saying, yeah, this is what has happened to me and I think it's an ACE. I think it is too. And so I'm actually going to do a lot more research, my personal opinion, and hear me out, because I think it should be. And if it isn't already, because the CDC has finally made updates since 1998, June of 2023, which to me is improvement. If more and more people start saying how much of an adverse experience finding your adopted parents are, I think it will. I promise you, I do. And we're going to look back at this podcast and say, yeah, because again, I never thought that community violence would be, and we let you know, you're in Chicago.
Yes.
Community violence is officially an ACE now. I think people are really having a problem with homelessness being an ACE now. Or the one that I'm struggling with is bullying, because these are things that we've normalized. But what people don't realize is bullying is an ACE for real. And it really depends on who it comes from and when it happens. So understand, I'm with you 110%. And I can help, because I'm telling you, your story is amazing. And there are people out there with a similar story.
Yes. And I think anyone that has come out of the foster care system, I think, I mean, that's a really, really tough situation. Open adoption started in the 1980s, and a lot of adoption agencies and orphanage closed, and the Department of Children and Family Services took over. Unfortunately, so many children, rather than being put in orphanages, were put in homes. I think that is a better setting. Unfortunately, they got moved and they got moved and they got moved. That is traumatic. That is an adverse childhood experience, to be ripped away from your family and then expected to assimilate in a new family that's not your family, and then ripped away again, sometimes to return to mom or dad, sometimes to return back into the foster care system. So it's a difficult experience. Some of those kids get adopted out of foster care, but they come with their own guidebook, their own set of rules that parents have to really be cognizant on how to manage them and meet their needs.
Agreed. Quick question. So you've met birth mom.
Yes.
How do you feel?
There's an essay in my second book, Belonging Matters, called The Happiest Moment. And a friend asked me this question: what was your happiest moment? And I hesitated because, like most people, you want to tick off what they expect to hear. The birth of your first child, walking down the aisle and getting married, those kinds of things. And while those moments were truly special, I expected to be happy on those days. The day that I heard my birth mom's voice on the phone was probably the happiest day of my life. I can still see myself sitting in my kitchen on the phone thinking, I am talking to her. I am talking to her for the very first time. 50 years old, I am talking to my mother. It was just spectacular that, and I had no idea I was going to feel like that. That I needed it, that it would complete me in such a way that I would never be the same.
Mhm.
That longing had always been inside, and just didn't recognize it, couldn't recognize it. And when I finally had the experience, I realized, wow, I'm just like everybody else now. I may be adopted, but I know my birth mom. I know who she is, what she looks like, what she sounds like. I felt like I was on equal footing with everybody else that's not adopted.
Blessing. What a blessing. You're amazing. I promise you're a hero. God bless you. Do you see similarities?
Yes, we look a lot. My sister and I, obviously, we look a lot alike to each other, but we look a lot like her too. When my kids were growing up, I have 4 kids, and 3 of them played college sports. And my husband would say to me, whatever that mystery gene is that you got, um, somebody had to be a really athletic person. So when I never met my birth father, he had a heart attack before he had come around and decided to meet my sister, but he played college football. And so figuring that out, that gene um, came from his side of the family. My brother, my half brother that I'm very close to now, played college golf. So some of the mystery um, has been solved. My birth father, one of the things that he passed on is the same smile and the same teeth. Okay, I know that's weird,
It's
but
not.
when I I look at my brother and my half sister, and I see that same smile that my son has, and 2 of my daughters have. Um, it sounds like nothing if you're not adopted, but when you are and you've been deprived of this knowledge your whole life and you figure it out, I mean, I smile every time I look at my brother and at my son because I know where that comes from my birth father, and that knowledge is power.
It is. You have to excuse me.
Sure.
That your story is amazing because I promise you, people are going to relate to that. It's always been a question of where your smile come from, where your height come from, these are things that we normally people that are not adopted always question. You know what I mean? So I get it. I don't think it's just you. Trust me, I get it. I think of these type of things, which is the reason why, again, and I hate to bring this back to me because this is not my podcast episode for me, but that's the reason why I went to try to understand ACEs. You know what I mean? Because it's like, why are these things happening? It came from somewhere. So something as cute as a smile, I know where I got it from. You know what I mean?
I
Yeah,
do.
I get it. I can definitely relate and understand tremendously. Are your children tall?
Well, I have a daughter that's 6 feet tall. She's the one that played college basketball, and my son is 6'3". But my youngest daughter is 5'4". So
Okay.
she takes after my husband's side of the family. But I was listening to you make your comment, and another I think similarity to from for adoption that also follows through with some childhood um, traumas. Adoptees like me don't generally talk about their experiences. I'm able to because I'm older and I'm a mother, but I think adoptees bottle it up inside. I had an experience when I was a kid. I had a sleepover. My sister and I had a sleepover birthday party, and I invited the one of the new girls in the class, and she didn't know me very well, but everybody was asleep, and she asked me, "You're adopted, aren't you?" So it stuck in my mind because I thought, well, how did she know that already? And it occurred to me, people knew, even though I didn't talk about it and they didn't ask me questions about it, they knew. And that bothered me. Um, Adoption was a stigma back in those days. We were placed in families so that we looked like our parents. Um, it was a stigma also to our adoptive parents because they had infertility issues that didn't allow them to have biological children for a while. So that's why we looked like our parents, and it's less of a stigma now. And certainly it's very obvious sometimes the children that are adopted and not adopted. Um, but what's similar to being an adoptee, this embarrassment about it and this unwillingness to talk about it when you're vulnerable as a young child or as a teenager, has to be similar to people that have had abuse and other childhood traumas, which leads me to, kind of plead my case that adoption should be on that list of ACEs because our reaction to it, our our physical, mental, emotional reaction to that experience is like those other experiences of abuse, lack of proper care, the homelessness situation. Nobody would want to admit that they live in a car. Nobody would want to admit what grandpa did to them when he was supposed to be babysitting. Um, and I don't, when I was a kid, I didn't want to talk about, yeah, I had this, I don't know anything about it. Don't ask me questions about it.
That's ACEs. And that's the reason why I agree with you. That's ACEs. You better come on and educate because this is ACEs. And that is it. I mean, I just, your testimony time.
Mm-hmm.
You've watched, you've supported, the story of me having your episode 40 plus, which is so humbling to me. Thank the Lord. I encourage you to continue. I
Thank you.
encourage you to keep telling your story. I encourage you because somebody is going to share in your sentiments and say, you know what, Julie spoke this up. Julie said something about this. I agree with Julie, or I understand her story, or people are going to do it. You have to do it. It is not too late. Don't think your age has anything to do with it. We're close to an age. Let's be clear.
Well, drag me along with you. I'll come.
I'm telling you, because this is it. We are here to continue to advocate and educate. And the more and more we have these stories, kudos to you. Like you said, when you were younger, who wanted to tell their story? I know I didn't at all. And I still, to this day, don't share my parents' story. I share mine because again, that's their story to share, which I don't know if you can tell, I'm kind of limiting my questions because you can't answer for your sister, but sister wasn't having it in the beginning. Glad the sister has came around.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I would love to meet. I didn't even know you had a twin till now. So, you know what I mean? There's certain things that you can ask and there's certain things that you can question, but there are certain things that you really can't. Like I cannot to this day understand why my mom did certain things. I have built this fear, confession, of having surgeries due to the fact that I know, listening to my dad's story, that when he was 16, his mom passed away as a result of a surgery. So I'm like, no surgeries for me. I don't care what it is. C-section,
Mm-hmm.
nope, I'm pushing this baby out, whatever, because of the stories that have been shared with us. So I have one more question. birth mom, adoptive mom. Have they met?
No, they've not ever met, but they did exchange letters. Birth mom lives in northern Minnesota, and adoptive mom lives in Chicago. Geographically, it wasn't convenient. My adoptive mom didn't want to meet her, but she
Okay.
agreed to exchange letters. That was in the beginning.
Okay.
My adoptive mom is also 91 years old. They're the same age. As I said to you, Catholic Charities tried to match everybody up like they did a great job. But because she's older and because we're now 15 years later and this path, this really difficult path is behind us and we're back where we were, every once in a while, just recently, I was with my mom at Panera. We were sharing a cup of coffee and a snack, and she looks at me and she says, "How's your birth mom?" I was like, "What?" "She's fine, mom." So we had a little conversation. So, you know, you just can't ever give up on people. They take their time getting to it. It is really up to us to show them nothing's going to change between you and I. You're my mom. You've always been my mom. Yes, I have this other mom, but she plays a different role in my life than you do. So we got there. We're there. It's been a long time in coming, but it's ending in the right place.
And guess what? Good for her and good for you. I gotta come up with another word for amazing, but let me tell you, I use it because it's you. It is you. I am here for this. I am here for the joyride. I am here for the story. I'm here for the support. I am here for everything. Welcome, Julie. You are
Thank
official.
you.
You get it. Now you understand the story of being victorious because it's not me, it's you. You're the
Mm.
one that is sharing your story, giving an eye-opening experience to people that can understand it. And by becoming victorious, you're a hero. Congratulations. Oh, God bless you. So you have to continue doing this. And of course, I will share again. Dr. Nicole Price is heavy on empathy. She was on the episode. She is actually now doing so much, but she emphasizes empathy. She grew up, her birth father wasn't her. She thought the man that she grew up with was her birth father and found out he wasn't. And so when she finally met her father, it was like, oh my God, that's where I got my stuff from. So that's why I kind of, and it can come up with all these extra questions based off of, the people from previous podcasts. So she's heavy on empathy. And then you have Albert, who he advocates to this day for foster children, for adoptees. There are people in this community. I promise you, I will send you those episodes because I know you've watched several, but there are episodes where people are sharing their story and you can understand that, yes, the more and more we continue to do this, the more and more we can all help each other. So thank you again for coming on my podcast. You have graced me tremendously. Where can people find you?
I have a website, juliemcgueauthor.com, and my books are sold wherever books are sold. So you don't have to go to the Amazon. They're sold in local bookstores and Barnes and Noble.
And I know there are several authors that have came on that have shared their stories and have understood ACEs. So what I love about this one is you definitely know about ACEs. You can join this community, and they meet. So I have to connect you with Leah, and I have to connect you with Lisa. Lisa's story is the ninth child. Oh, it's so many. It is so many. You're going to love the community. So welcome. I'm
Thank you.
excited. Everybody knows where to find me. Listen, Dr. VicTORIEus everywhere, Be VicTORIEus. I now have a foundation. Shout out to Be VicTORIEus Foundation. What is interesting is in 2020, those graduates could not graduate because of COVID. And so I'm
Mm,
a tad bit swamped because they're graduating this year from college. So for the ones that did not make it, they made it. And so the stories from those students, oh my God, you have no clue. I
wow.
welcome you to this Be VicTORIEus community. You guys, this one is a good, I think all of the podcasts, of course, is a good, but this one is the unique one. This is the one. I think this one, as far as spreading awareness, especially for not only Mother's Day, but for mental health awareness. Yeah, this is a good one. So, you guys, we will see you all very, very soon. Any questions or concerns, you know how to reach us. Thank you again for another episode of Be VicTORIEus. Talk to you guys later. Bye bye.